Hey everyone, welcome back to the Monday Night Pod. Tyler and Fensky. This week we're looking at David's successes. Once again, you can find these messages if you search SNL Summerlin on YouTube, and we would encourage you to watch the message through, as this podcast is a supplement to the message where we're going in greater depth and greater insight than the teaching. So please go on YouTube. Once again, SNL Summerlin, watch the teaching, David's successes, and then this podcast is an adjunct to that.
Yeah, we went over the topic of success in general, and David's the example number one to follow of just clues, and wanted to take it deeper. This is one of those topics that's always frustrated me in church because I've rarely seen it get taught right. Usually it's towards one end where it's just prosperity. Mm-hmm. You know, just show up to church and God's going to bless you with this and that. And life's
usually financial, yeah.
Always financial.
When we're talking prosperity, yeah.
Always financial.
And that was the thing for a while. Over a decade in the church, right? Very popular.
Yeah.
Of course, right? Who would not want to come to church and hear that God's going to shower you with homes, cars, cash, boats?
Sign me up.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I think to combat that teaching, it went so far to the other end where it's like, oh, it's all about suffering, and if I'm in poverty, I'm honoring God, and that's how committed I am to God. I'm going to say no to everything worldly. And it's like, well, what does God say about this? Mm-hmm. Right? And God invites us to be a part of his story in successes. And I try to make it clear, success isn't defined as I was given X, Y, Z in materialism. Mm-hmm. Success is I was presented with this adversity and I overcame it by walking with the Lord, right? And this is what David is shown in 1 Samuel 18 is no matter what he was told to do. So he's given adversities, he's given tasks to complete, and it says that he did them so successfully, my footnote says so wisely, that it blessed everyone else.
Yeah, you make a good point because that's something that I think people hear. So adversity is a blessing. That's your opportunity, which is true. Adversity, opportunity, adversity, opportunity. This is how you get better, is by meeting challenges and succeeding. And that's where you find real enjoyment too in life. You don't find actual enjoyment from just laying around and doing nothing. It's by actually meeting challenges. This goes back to Genesis 1. Yeah. Okay, where they will rule, right? Here's the dominion covenant, and we will rule and subdue the earth, right? So subdue meaning that there's going to be some pushback there, okay? So now you're getting into the root at like what is life about, right? So nobody values things that are easy, and they don't value things that didn't take any work or energy or difficulty or here was the process of attaining it. You hear many people say that the actual destination was not as enjoyable as the journey. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're getting into the root of what is actually what we are born for. And all that said, you can teach on that, and then when it comes down to it, we're so apt to run from it. My phone is full right now of people running from adversity in their life. They poured time, talent, and treasure into a worthy goal, and as soon as it got difficult, which usually meant that the levels got high enough that it became difficult, they're going to shrink back. They don't like it. They don't enjoy it as much anymore. And I mean, we could talk for days on this. This could be a weekend seminar, right? But the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Mm-hmm. So the worst way of making decisions is feelings, and many people get trapped making permanent decisions off of temporary feelings. And when it comes to actual adversity, that's where they get stuck, is that they don't like it or not enjoying it because it's difficult, because there's adversity, because there's a pushback. But then their solution is to run away, because we all want to feel just that comfort. And we're just going to run away from it, and I don't have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Now, realizing that was the exact point that others kept going and succeeded for it. And you had a good prologue today where you touched on the things that David had already met and overcame. And now it's going to go, though, to another level, as you're going to talk on next week, right, with Saul trying to murder him,
Yeah.
right? But you're seeing that, whatever Saul sent him to do, David did it so successfully or wisely, same word, right? So it's good that you dug into wisdom.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the breakthrough is instead of getting overwhelmed by the feeling of what's right in front of me, I'm thinking with the mind of God on it. And I'm considering, what is the Lord saying right now? Because I know that the Lord is in control, right? And that should be our advantage as believers, right? It ticks me off because I think the world often gets this better than us in the church because they understand the process of sowing and reaping. It might be because they dictate their whole identity off of it in some cases, right? Like my identity is whether I overcome this adversity or not so I can gain status and recognition. Whereas in the church, sometimes that's the point where they go, oh, well, if it's God's will.
Yes.
And they sit and they wait on God while God's waiting on them.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can't get away from what you reaping, what you sowing. I tried to make that point. It's like the law of gravity. There might be a certain time in a certain situation where God allows you to levitate or fly for a specific reason. I'm pretty certain that he's going to keep you bound by it for his glory, right? And so sometimes, especially in church, it's like, we're hoping for more people. We're hoping for a bigger, if God does. You have no systems in place. You have no organization. You're sowing disorganization and you're reaping chaos. And yet, thinking that God's behind you and, we're praying about it. You're supposed to pray about it. You're also supposed to put that faith into action.
Yeah, right. Yeah, faith involves action, right? And God's not going to, you're not going to get vegetables out of mud, right? And I think that's where the prosperity teaching was so popular and people gravitated to that so much. One, our materialistic culture, which says that success is how much money you can accrue on earth, how much stuff you can accrue on earth. At the same time that it essentially lets you off the hook. Because all you got to do is just kind of lay back, and then here's this, mystical force almost that's just going to hook it up in the form of God, right? As you said tonight, God becomes Santa Claus and this genie in a bottle to people that is there to just bestow money and possession and status and fame and everything's everybody wanted. And it's a very destructive teaching.
For sure.
Because the end result is you get, like, I'll give you a real world example. Here was a kid that is telling me, this was back in December, so this was his intro, and he's telling me, I'm a Christian, and he's like, I just don't understand how other people can succeed in baseball, but I'm not succeeding even though I'm a Christian. And he said, it makes me question my faith.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right, because his perception of God was that God was there to make him successful in baseball. So therefore, if he was not successful in baseball, that was God's fault, and God was letting him down. It had nothing to do with up to that point. No nutritional application, no coherent throwing program, no coherent training, no, psychologically a mess, right? Nothing that, all the things that he's supposed to be using his mind for, it goes back to God doesn't give us chairs. Gives us trees, right? And a lot of people think that God's going to give them chairs. So it's like, where's my chair? Not understanding there's the tree. Go to work on it and do it, right? Because the work is such a key application of faith. And faith is an action. It's not an emotion. It's a response to the revealed will of God. So if God revealed to you this, then now you are supposed to take action to that. And that's what you see in David's life, is that he's been anointed king over Israel. So that's a revealed will of God in his life. And he's not going to force this by trying to kill Saul or, usurp Saul or, have some kind of coup. But here he is walking faithfully in the things that God has presented in front of him, which are often in the form of adversity. We're talking about that whatever Saul sent him to do, David did it so successfully that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. Specifically, what he sent him to do was missions against the Philistines. Very high
risk.
danger and risk,
Yeah.
right? So there's a teaching right there.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think people die for a lack of knowledge. And so
Isaiah 6, yeah.
I figured being a Christian would make me good at baseball. It's like, what, you just didn't know the right things to do. If you seek first the kingdom and are in the Word day and night, eventually, hopefully, you're going to be put around the right people, and that knowledge will come to you over time, right? And so I think a lot of times people, they just don't know enough, right? And they're not willing to push further and go deeper until they do and ask of God to reveal that knowledge to them, right? And yeah, it's a deep topic and certainly a controversial one in the church, and trying to take a stab at it and get it right and give people, sound instruction.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to it because it's like, is your faith based off of, so one, we have a problem where people will base their faith off of other people. So if this person was, this person who's a Christian was mean to me or did something bad to me, now that, I don't believe anymore. Or this pastor that I really liked, and then it turns out that he did X, Y, and Z. He had a fall. So I don't know if, I don't believe anymore. I don't go to church anymore. But you're going back to 1 Corinthians 2, where is your faith in Paul? Is it in Apollos? Is it in Cephas?
Yeah.
Were you crucified into Paul? Or if your faith is in Christ alone.
Yeah.
So if a pastor falls, that should be a warning to you, but it shouldn't buckle your faith. Because did you put faith in the pastor? So we have this idolatry of other people. And then we have this idolatry of this fame / success / all my dreams should come true, where we're putting that in front of God.
Yeah.
So here's my agenda. God needs to get on board. And if my agenda isn't successful, now I'm going to blame God for this.
Yeah. Where in reality, God's inviting you to be a part of his story and glorify his name. And whatever adversities come along the way there, you get to partake in something greater than yourself, right? Something with way more meaning. Life and life abundantly.
Yeah.
Right? Whole new level.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about, because you touched on it well in the teaching about, here's what the word says about persecutions that are going to come your way, about taking your cross daily and following me, about counting the costs. That's why you get when you go over heroes of faith, and it's covered in the church, it stops always at verse 35. It never gets into verse 36.
Yeah.
Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. So the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. So there might be a greater purpose in your life than to be successful at the sport of baseball from the window of age 19 to, if you were really, really good, age 38. And there's still a whole nother life for you on planet Earth past that.
For sure.
Right? Maybe that is God's will for you, right? But I think it's foolish to. I think to me it's a form of idolatry where people will put material possessions, they'll put fame, they'll put success up on this pedestal, and they're putting in front of God, and then they'll blame God.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. Their will and their agenda. I was going to use Paul I planned on using Paul as an example to where he was also an example of success in that even though he was beaten, tortured, imprisoned, and persecuted for the gospel, he had success over those circumstances because the gospel of Jesus Christ was still pushed out to the Gentiles, right? That was the adversity that he overcame and the calling on his life.
Yeah.
And he's still getting residuals in heaven for that. That's success,
Yeah.
right? Even if it costs you your life, you're committed to Jesus Christ and the mission that he has for you, and you get to have a story in the gospel being advanced in the kingdom.
Yeah, what Tyler's referencing there in terms of just the reward for that, that's Daniel 12, and it says those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever, talking about the end of the age. Right? So there is a bigger call on your life than just the temporary comings and goings of fame and how the market is going up or the market's down. You made a great point tonight. If the economy's up, then I'm up. If the economy's down, then I'm down. The comings and goings of this world. The great point when you drill into Romans 12 with that, because I've seen that with people, and that's something that even I've had to check myself on and get away from. Is my level of activity in investments so high that this is actually affecting my day to day? Is how well is how well is Microsoft doing after their quarterly report?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like it was a great point when you talked about it's like that focus just needs to shift onto the kingdom.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And that's the mission you need to carry out.
Seek first the kingdom, and all these other things will be given unto you as well. So you guys can rewatch the teaching on SNL Summerlin's YouTube page, the topic of David's successes. Hope everybody has a great week. Again, this is the Monday Night Pod, Tyler and Fensky.